Well, we're transitioning now into the second part of our program where we will be taking a look at volunteerism through the pandemic. We know that we've been through a very challenging 15 months, not only globally, but from a local perspective. And given the nuances of the South African environment, where the economic fallout and social strains that have occurred from the lockdown levels and ongoing concerns of the COVID-19 pandemic, this is where we need to be a lot more mindful as to how it is that we can leverage volunteerism through NGOs and foundations, making sure that we have the right volunteers who are leading the charge. And of course, the NPOs who benefit from these efforts will share with us their representatives and their perspectives on this key matter. Well, for this conversation, I'm joined by three panelists, all of whom are joining us virtually as we are mindful of prioritizing the health and well-being of our speakers and participants. As a result, we've decided to ensure that we can interact with them virtually. Allow me to warmly welcome, and you can also share your warm virtual applause as I introduce our three speakers. Charlene Lekay, who's from Momentum Metropolitan Foundation. Charlene Lekay has worked in the media and creative industries for many years and is currently the Group CSI Manager for Momentum Metropolitan Holdings. She is joined by Sarah Khumalo of Momentum Metropolitan. Sarah Khumalo has become the first Black African woman to summit Mount Everest, which she completed on her fourth attempt. She has a solid track record at some of South Africa's leading financial institutions, specializing in e-commerce and loyalty programs. She founded Summits, with a purpose and initiative that is meant to raise funds to build physical and digital libraries in disadvantaged areas and schools throughout the African continent. We also joined by Thapelo Mokoena of Lesedi La Batho. Thapelo joined Lesedi La Batho as Chief Operating Officer in 2019 and in March 2021 has become the Center Manager. Thapelo enjoys being part of Lesedi La Batho staff as he is working within his own community, instilling hope and fulfilling his core purpose, which is helping others. Thapelo, Sarah and Charlene, it's really great to have you all joining us here virtually, and we're quite excited to get into your thoughts and share some of your suggestions in terms of volunteering in the times of a pandemic. But before we get into our conversation, I'm excited for us to pick the brains of our participants and delegates here too. And we've got a poll question which will hopefully help to set the tone of this conversation as we look to understand the landscape in volunteering through a global pandemic. So if you take a look at your screen, to the right-hand side of your screen, there is an option for you to participate in our poll. Click on that, and our poll question asks you, how has your organization's volunteerism program been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic? We have a few options for you to select there, but we are quite happy to hear what's been top of mind for you, how your organization's volunteerism program has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. As soon as we get many of your feedback and your answers, we'll be sure to address them and weave them into our conversation here with our panelists. But without further ado, I'm quite excited to speak to all of you. And Charlene, perhaps I'll address this question to you first. We have been building up this morning on clearly understanding the theme and concept of purpose within institutions and organizations. And I'm quite keen to hear from you how it is that volunteering has really helped to add value to the purpose of Momentum Metropolitan and what some of the benefits have certainly been in light of what you've witnessed through this pandemic, Charlene.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity, Gugu. I think it's always a good place for me to start with our organization's purpose, which we identify as wanting to enable people from all walks of life to achieve their life goals and aspirations. And if you contextualize that within a staff volunteer programs, for me, it would mean that we are supposed to enable employees from all walks of life, because we are a diverse organization, to create more value, as our CEO Hilly Meyer said this morning. So not to give back, but to create more value in society. And I think an organization like Momentum Metropolitan is uniquely positioned to enable the creation of that more value. And, you know, many organizations might do it in different ways. For us, it is about making sure that we have enabling policies in place that make it easy for employees to contribute and to live this, what we call active citizenship, and that we that we really put our money where our mouth is, and that we put the company resources and assets, whatever they may be, whatever is required, behind the volunteering effort, so that people feel empowered to volunteer and to contribute beyond their personal limitations. Now, whether that limitation is either in the form of resources, I don't have the money to contribute necessarily, or whether that is in the form of time, I don't have the time to contribute. And so it is really the job of an organization to make sure that there is I would say, a range of volunteering opportunities that will enable everybody, no matter how little or how much time they have, no matter how little or how much money they have. Because if there's one thing that we've been trying to drive is that everybody can. So everybody has a give. And your job as an organization is to help people find that give and then enable them to do so. And in terms of the benefits that we have seen of volunteering, I've seen in some of the comments earlier on the chat making reference to employee retention, employee morale, and PR and marketing, and all those things are very good and they are very obvious. But I think during the last year of the COVID pandemic, what we have seen is a very clear correlation between employee volunteering and building resilience, and strengthening the mental health of employees. And just to quickly give you an example, contrary to what we expected, there were a lot of positive developments in our volunteer program, increase in online registration of our volunteering activities, an increase in payroll giving, for example, that was completely unexpected. And so when we checked in with our human capital colleagues to try and get insight as to why all of this was happening, I remember the one thing that Dieter Veldsman, our head of organizational development, said is, volunteering offers people the opportunity to move beyond their own circumstances, and it helps us to see things in perspective. It moves you from a me-centered place to a we-centered place, where in me-centeredness, I see problem, I see anxiety, I see fear, I see isolation, I feel the depression and the depressiveness of the very constrained environment that we are in. We-centeredness thinks about solutions. It is empathy with the other person, and it leads to connection. So yes, all of those good things about volunteering are very true, that's been mentioned this morning. But I think the benefit on a human, personal, individual level has very much been its contribution to building resilience.
I must say, Charlene, looking at some of the comments, Bokang Mokoena saying it's a powerful statement there, couldn't agree with you more. I'm actually fascinated by the human mindset that even through the midst of a pandemic where a lot of South Africans were concerned about getting retrenched, potential salary cuts, loss of life as well, that there was this ongoing interest and keen interest from the employees of Momentum Metropolitan to extend themselves, to focus on the we. And I think that speaks to that give that you say is innate with us as human beings. And I want to build up on that theme and perhaps come to you, Sarah, just to explore your enthusiasm as a South African who's participated in such volunteerism programs. What actually fires that enthusiasm within you internally? What is it that even throughout the pandemic and the consistent uncertainty we have in this market that has encouraged you and many of your counterparts to actually continue giving despite the difficulties of the environment, Sarah?
Thank you so much, Gugu. My commitment to myself at some point, I can pinpoint it to 2009. I lost my sister and realized actually at that point how fragile life is. Not that I didn't know it, but it just made it real for me and made me realize that I needed to go back to living a life of service, which is something that I learned from my grandparents, who were missionaries and socially conscious champions, I would call them, in their communities, not just in the public eye, but also at home. And my grandfather always used to say, if you don't live a life of service, that's not a life worth living. And I think with this pandemic, it became real. You know, it became easy for me to to once again reflect on the fragility of life as we know it. So social consciousness for me, or social good for me, is really about Ubuntu. It is what makes us African, what makes us human, separate from animals. It's about realizing that I am because you are. It's about a theme that we had for the Dissedia Award that said, we is stronger than me on my own, appreciating that, you know, we are passing by and we have a limited time on earth, and to be able to sustain or have an impact for the next generation as we are thriving because of sacrifices yesteryear people did for us. We needed to be intentional, and we need to be intentional with everything that we do. And that's why I love volunteering, and I'm passionate about education. And it makes it easier because I'm associated and I'm employed by Momentum Metropolitan, who have values, and they do what they said they would do, and they are very conscious about the community that they do business in, and really have empathy that comes with it. There is Ubuntu in being socially conscious. It's African and it's natural. And for me, it's not something that I have to think about. I just go on and do it. And on my own, I've been able to do so much with the support of friends and organizations such as Momentum. And I know that if we are all deliberate, we can do a lot more and leave the world a lot better than we found it.
Thanks so much for that, Sarah, and really helps paint a picture in terms of understanding the environment and being in an enabling culture within the organization that you work for. I want to go back to the poll for just a moment and go back to the question that was addressed as to how your organization's volunteerism program has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And a large majority of participants are saying that all volunteer programs ceased or have been put on hold. That's about 27% that have said that. 24% follow up to say existing volunteer programs shifted to online. So that tells us something quite peculiar. And Charlene, I want to come back to you here as the head of CSI for Momentum Metropolitan Foundation. You clearly had a very difficult conversation with some of your leaders and counterparts as to, do we stop? Do we go? Do we halt it? Do we move it online? But share with us, what were some of the difficult decisions that you had to take at the beginning of the pandemic regarding the volunteerism program, and how you had to amend it to meet the needs of some of your beneficiaries?
Yeah, difficult conversations indeed. And I think it is because of the very nature of volunteerism. It's about the human connection. It's about me touching you, and we engaging and interacting and learning from each other. So it was a difficult one for I would say, our hardcore volunteers, to whom this kind of connection is very important. But I think we had to become extremely creative, flexible, adaptable, and change the mind shift, or enable a mind shift for people to understand that it is possible for you to do impactful work even through online means, that you can still do wonderful, beautiful, skills-based volunteering work that can enable and support organizations, even doing it online. I read research the other day, and I don't know what the figures would be for South Africa. Maybe some of the attendees here could help us with that. The Stanford Innovation Review that said, Social Innovation Review that said that 2% of organizations' operating costs goes towards the payment of professional services. And if you just think about that and what can be done with 2% of the small, very small budgets that nonprofits sometimes have to change the world with, you can imagine what an impact that could have if those services could be provided by corporate volunteers. So it was a process and a journey of reframing what we regard as volunteering, and about expanding the number of volunteer or the kind of volunteering opportunities, so that it didn't need to be you physically going to a nonprofit to offer your support or services, but that you could do micro volunteering, that you could do an online skills-based service, for which Momentum Metropolitan then provided match funding to that organization, or that if payroll giving was all that you could see yourself yourself doing at the moment, then that was okay. I think the pandemic taught us that we had to leave our judgment at the door. 5 years ago, there might have been a very specific idea about what a volunteer looked like and what a volunteer did. But during the course of the COVID pandemic, that definitely shifted. I think the other important thing, Gugu, is that we were working and operating in an enabling environment where we had a leadership that from the start of the hard lockdown engaged regularly with the employees. So employees were working in an environment where they felt connected and they felt supported. There were access to various employee wellness services, regular communication, and I think within that environment, it was easy to foster that kind of openness to connecting and to contributing and to service in a digital environment. When we had to then move to our Lesedi Volunteer Recognition Awards, which is something that we do on an annual basis, that in itself was also a challenge because the whole process had to be run online, from recruiting the nominations to the shortlisting, sifting. Even the event ended up being a hybrid event. But throughout all of this, what we saw is really the hardwiredness to kindness and to staying connected. And that people wanted to participate and they wanted to show their support. So yes, it was difficult. Yes, it was strange at first, but I think as we saw the benefit still that could be delivered through online volunteering. And Tapelo Mokoena, who's here today on the panel from Lesedi Lebatu, he was actually a participant in our most recent online volunteering event, which is the NPO Business Challenge. And when employees felt and saw that a contribution that was impactful was still possible, I think that's when the dial shifted.
That's such an interesting note, and you're quite right. We will speak to Tapelo in just a moment, but you mentioned something quite critical about the Lesedi Awards that you have that offers recognition to individuals who are volunteering. And Andrew Hatfield has been kind enough to share a link of a case study which shares much of your journey, the challenges and the opportunities that you managed to experience in launching and recognizing many of the participants in these awards. I'm quite excited here, Charlene. Maybe you can take us into your confidence slightly to share more details as to the challenges and the hurdles you experienced in not only putting these awards together, but how it's differed since its initial launch, if I'm not mistaken, in 2015 to what we've actually experienced recently in 2020, and of course the discrepancies around how people want to participate in these awards. Share some insight with us.
I can start by showing you my grey hair, which I got as a result of the Lesedi Awards last year. I think the most challenging thing was finding a way to not replicate, because it's not possible, but the warmth and the connection and just the togetherness that a celebration in person like that allows. Not being able to go out and physically recruit nominations was very difficult. It was difficult because usually this is something that we would do for 3-4 months in the run-up to the Lesedi Awards at all our main branches, and this was not possible. So we had to rely on digital communication, and we had to rely on people understanding that coming forward to enter for the Lesedi Awards is not about you. It's not because you are trying to blow your own horn, but it's because you are trying to open up a door into wider recognition and awareness for the organization that you serve. So that was really one of the first challenges. And then, of course, doing the whole process of shortlisting and scoring online. I think now we are all very used to conducting our lives online, but then it was quite a difficult thing for us to adjust to. But in the event itself, I think an important thing is that the Lesedi Awards is just the culmination of who we are as an organization. It's an event, but what is underpinning the event is our is our drive and our philosophy to really be intentional about being a purposeful organization, and an organization that allows the people, the staff, the employees that are part of the organization to live their purpose as well. And the event itself became a hybrid event, which then for the first time meant that we could include around 300 of our staff members. That was never possible before. And it became a triumph in the face of all adversity kind of event, where we said, we know that this year was tough. We understand that this year was difficult, but tonight we are celebrating the fact that it is possible to see light in the tunnel, because the COVID tunnel was very long, and there didn't seem to be any light at the end, but that it is possible to, even within this environment, to find hope and to find meaning.
Very true. I like how you elaborate that this COVID tunnel is indeed very long. We still find ourselves in the depths of it, but we continue to find those lights and those sweet spots that exist in order to ensure that we encourage and volunteer for beneficiaries to excel. Just a quick comment here, Charlene, that comes through from Amanda Blankfield-Kosef. She says the Lesedi Awards are a great incentive for employee volunteering. I enjoyed being on the panel of adjudicators a few years ago. So I think an acknowledgement there that it really does help to propel that kind of energy that we'd like to see within the corporate space. Sarah, I'll come to you in a moment, but Thapelo, we've kept you quiet for way too long. You are a representative of Lesedi Labathu. Light of the people is what it is directly translated. And Charlene has been kind enough to actually elaborate on the fact that you are one of the beneficiaries of the Momentum Metropolitan Volunteerism Program. Shed some light as to how did you benefit, how did you interact with the volunteers who came on board to support you and your initiative during this time of the pandemic?
Oh, okay. So at the Momentum, the Cube that we attended, we basically shared our challenges that we had at the center. The Momentum team was there to assist us. We had two groups of them, which competed on coming with the best solution for us that would work for best for our center, in implementing and working for the center and the community at large. So we had the Yuri Bushiri team that was successful. They helped us with the implementation of setting up our entrepreneurship hub. Basically, the entrepreneurship hub is something that we started as our exit for our beneficiaries that we're training. During this tunnel, as you are saying, of the COVID, it's very difficult now to place beneficiaries in jobs. So we have motivated and allocated beneficiaries who are willing and keen to start their own businesses to come and work inside our entrepreneurship hub, where we will let them get mentorship from our stakeholders. It can be momentum for good volunteers who have knowledge about running businesses, and also our local business partners here in the community who will mentor to starting their own businesses at large.
I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit more about that, Thapelo. Looking through your website in preparation for this conversation, not only do you run a daycare center, you support South Africans with job placements and even social enterprises for more senior citizens of the country. Tell us how it is that the support that you receive from Momentum Metropolitan Volunteerism has actually helped to sustain some of these efforts. Are there some people whose lives that have changed on the back of this Volunteerism Act that you can share with us as examples in conversation today?
Oh, okay. I was jumping in into highlighting the event we attended in the past. Let me give you a background of our center then. So Lesedi Labatu is a skills training center. We offer skills for free to youth 18 to 34 years of age in Mabopane and surrounding areas. We have the following skills. It's computer accredited, cash and merchandising, life skills, which is our work readiness program, and cash and merchandising. However, due to the main pandemic, we have three skills that are currently on hold, which is baking, entrepreneurship, and baby care. Reason these skills are on hold is because we are lacking center space currently, because we have to abide to the 1.5 meter social distancing rules and protocols. So we don't really have the space to accommodate other skills. So we had to eliminate some of the skills in order to be able to accommodate the beneficiaries in the four skills that I just mentioned. So we also have a daycare there. It's called Ratanan Daycare. The reason this daycare was started at the beginning was that we have teen mother support groups. We identified that most teen mothers in Mabopane ended up dropping out of school and not completing their matric because they had to take care of their young children. So this center daycare started for basically targeting these teen mothers so that they can come and leave their children at the center and then they can go and continue with the schoolwork. However, it doesn't only accommodate the teen mothers' children, it also accommodates children in the community from community members. They're paying something so that the daycare can also run and also manage its overheads. And then we've got social auxiliary workers in the 9 schools of Mabopane who educate the children about human rights, social reproductive health, and also intervene on special cases that occur at schools on a daily basis that need them to go and intervene at the beneficiaries' houses individually and so forth. And then we also have community care workers at the center who work in the community by assisting their clients, which are ranging from mostly TB clients, HIV clients. They make sure that these people are taking their medications accordingly as prescribed by the doctor, and also they don't lapse, and that they also don't miss the doctor's appointments. And then we have an Ikemele Women Empowerment Group, which is a group that has been started to assist vulnerable women in the community, to instill hope in them, and also assist them to become contributing members, to also be able to earn their own salary and not depend on the people who are abusing them at home. Because the reason most women end up in abusive relationship and not leaving them is because they depend on the abuser to be the sole provider, to provide them with money for the children, for groceries and so forth. So the aim of this group is to empower this women. Currently we have a group that has passed out, finished with the 6 months of the program. They have started a vegetable garden. From that garden, they are selling vegetables and have some sort of income to bring home at the end of the day. And then we also have support groups that we host at the center, which are GBV support groups, commercial sex worker support groups, and also young mothers, as mentioned, and also men-to-men sessions. Reason we also involve men is that every time we talk about GBV, we exclude the men, and the men also want to be a part. This has been very impactful because the men are very hands-on and they're always asking for more. And they also come with solid solutions on how we can better come in solving this whole GBV crisis pandemic that we are experiencing currently in our country.
Indeed. Thank you so much for elaborating on that, because it really does add more context for us to understand how it is that you are appealing to the social challenges we have in South Africa. If we take a look at the most recent unemployment figures, very clear that the youth as well as black females are unfortunately on the periphery of economic contribution in the country. And the focus that you're clearly driving there is really raising awareness around these factors, including gender-based violence. I do want to follow up and build up on this new theme with both Sarah and Charlene, specifically focused around digital, or the digitization of volunteerism programs. This comes on the back of our poll result. We do see that 25% of participants have actually said that the existing volunteer programs have shifted online, and 19% say that new online volunteering programs have been developed. Sarah, maybe we can start with you. I mentioned that in your bio you are looking to launch and see the development of libraries within rural schools in South Africa, both physical structures as well as virtually. Tell us how it is that in this new digital age that we're living in, that you've implemented this kind of digital solution to your volunteerism program, and maybe we can expand as to how we're also seeing Momentum Metropolitan do this in its own capacity with you as a follow-up, Charlene. But Sarah, give us some insight here from your perspective.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. So Summit to Purpose, I was using my clients to raise money for libraries. I built 5 Mandela libraries, which were physical libraries. And with the pandemic, obviously, the clients have been put on hold. There's no international travel. So what we did, a friend of mine and I, is decided that we were going to do spinning for 8 hours and break a Guinness World Record and raise money to build digital libraries and not physical libraries anymore. So we partnered with iSchool Africa as well as Momentum, and we did break the Guinness World Record, and we raised 717,000 rands within 8 hours, which is a lot more
because
than
I actually think we need to take this moment to congratulate you. I want you to pause right there. We need to congratulate you. So I'm hoping that in the chat, we're going to see virtual applause. We're going to see congratulatory messages, because that is quite substantial, not only to break the record, but also use your own passion to change the lives of others. You can continue in terms of the elaboration on the virtual libraries.
So what actually inspired the virtual libraries is because during the pandemic, I had an opportunity to walk through the Kruger, and we found a little small, very clean school out there. And everything they had was donated by some American tourists that visited the school. And I thought to myself, what am I doing about this school? And I'm just really next door. And so I looked into it, and I thought, they are at home because of the pandemic. They can't go to school, but my children are still Zooming and going to school virtually. And, I looked at it and talked to iSchool Africa, and we actually put in a digital library in this small village school. And that's what started this Guinness World Record. And let's build at least one library in every province on the continent. But this, once again, was not going to be possible if other volunteers within Momentum did not jump in and come and spin with us on the 25th of October 2020 in the middle of the pandemic, and it was possible. And I just want to reiterate that it's important for someone to know why they're doing what they're doing. What are you passionate about? So I'm passionate about education. Even if the mountains are not there, I'm going to make a plan, because I have my why, and I'm very clear about why education is important, because I see it as an equalizer. And I think I also associate myself with companies that have similar values, that want to actually advance the education for the next generation and ensure that as the world continues to become a global village, the next generation of Africans are not second-class citizens. They are on par with everybody else. And that's why it's important for me. And that's why finding how to do it, irrespective of how the ground is changing around us, is always possible.
Oh, fantastic. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Sarah. And I must tell you that our delegates are all fantastic sports, because they've all sent through their applause, their congratulatory messages on the efforts, as well as even breaking the Guinness World Record. So look at you, not only moving mountains, but really shifting the landscape there. So congratulations again, Sarah. Charlene, let's come to you. Momentum Metropolitan Foundation, are we beginning to implement virtual volunteerism programs? And if so, are there certain challenges that we're also finding in that regard?
We've been implementing it for a number of years, Gugu. We've been fortunate to have a partnership with Social Enterprise for Good, which is an online volunteer management platform, where it basically is a place where causes and corporate volunteers can connect on similar things. So if you go onto the For Good platform, you will find a cause there that speaks to you, and you will find a way to contribute and volunteer. And if you don't, you always have the opportunity to do a customized offer, which is something that we've done a lot of as an organization. One of the unintended consequences of the lockdown was obviously a reduction in office space, and people being accustomed to starting to work from home. And so there was a lot of opportunity for goods donations and for furniture donations several times from offices that were either closed down or reduced space, office space that was required, that we then could donate through the For Good management platform. But I think if you are talking about challenges, we do live in South Africa where data and connectivity is an issue. So one of the things that we are embarking on and that we are trying to find a solution for, and that we want to offer to Momentum Metropolitan volunteers before year end, is to provide an opportunity for zero-rated access. Because although employees have been enabled to connect and work from home, many of them feel that they would rather want to use their own resources, but we don't want it to cost employees anything in order for them to do good and contribute. So we are looking at building a zero-rated data access solution for volunteers. And then the other thing that I think is quite important is that I think that the boundaries have shifted, where a get-together can now be two people having a virtual coffee, or it can be to people having a virtual lunch. And so we really try and create those opportunities still for volunteers and for causes to connect and see each other at least, and have that moment of interaction. So the Cube is one of those opportunities that Tapelo referred to, where it was an opportunity for our employees to listen and to understand what the challenges of the causes are, of the nonprofits are. And as you would have in a Zoom meeting in breakaway rooms, trying to solve those challenges. But I think it is important that even as we get comfortable with living in a more digital world and connecting in that way, that being able to see Sarah, being able to see her smile, being able to see you, being able to see Tapelo, that remains, and so that there is some element of us that remains connected as humans.
Very important, because as humans we do appreciate the connection and we really do thrive on it, knowing that we do have support from many of our parties and stakeholders who have a vested interest in our growth and development. And Tapelo, that brings me to you. You are a great example of an NPO which is not only changing the lives of individuals on the ground, but also fruitful enough to have a favorable relationship with Momentum Metropolitan Volunteerism Program. And I guess, are you able to share some learnings as an NPO as to what it is that you've done to position yourself to reap the benefits of a corporate volunteerism program like Momentum Metropolitan? I guess share some learnings from an NPO perspective to assist other NPOs as to what it is that they can do to better position themselves to benefit from these kind of engagements. Oh, well, look, there goes technology, right? Just when you thought that the link is up and everything's quite secure, we live and we have to adapt to these particular flows. But I think that does raise a very critical issue that we do need to be mindful of, is the data connectivity. So again, as we continue to work on getting Tapelo back on the line, and I understand we've got you back in focus, Tapelo. Thanks so much for reestablishing the line there to our technical team. Tapelo, my question to you was if you could share some learnings as a representative of an NPO as to how best, or what is it that other NPOs need to do to position themselves to benefit from these kind of engagements with corporate volunteer programs?
Hi Gugu, I couldn't really get you. My network is so bad currently now. Can I just restart my internet quick and get back?
No problem. I'll tell
I
you
don't know,
what,
because
Tapelo,
I'm
our
losing
team
you.
in
I
the
can't really
background will
hear
be
you clearly.
working on those dynamics to make sure that we can hear you. And I think this is a great reflection of the challenges that we all experience working in South Africa, right? Network stoppages, load shedding on some days, and other days where just the operating environment and where you are is just not conducive to what it is you want to do. So I think I'll pose that question to Sarah and both Charlene, perhaps to assist us in closing off. You've interacted with NPOs, you're witnessing the challenges that NPOs have at the moment, such as data connectivity. But if you had to share some suggestions to someone who is in Tapelo's shoes, Sarah, what would you say it is that they can do to better position themselves to benefit from volunteerism programs? Sarah?
Yes. So for me, I would look at identifying organizations that have CSI programs and understanding what their focus is. So if you look at Momentum Metropolitan as an example, it was making unemployed youths employable. So how is that aligned to what you're doing, and how can you position yourself to be relevant in that respect? It's also looking at what social issues are happening in the country in that moment and how you're solving that problem. I think everybody agrees that we want to make the world better for everybody. If the people out there are great, they are good clients, companies are profitable. So companies want to ensure that the communities that they serve, where they sell their products, is a healthy and well community. And if one of the things that NGOs need to be mindful of is what's important to the organization, how is what I'm delivering or the service that I'm giving or this problem that I'm solving aligned to the specific objective of the organization, and presenting it as such. I think the time where we just come with a begging bowl and expect to be given money and no question asked is gone. Everybody wants to solve a problem. What problem are you solving? How is it aligned to the people that you need money from? And how can you as a collective make South Africa better?
Very powerful note to leave it on. Solve for the problem and make South Africa better as a collective. Thank you so much for your feedback there, Sarah. Charlene, we'll give you 30 seconds to wrap it up for us and maybe just some of your suggestions in closing remarks for this conversation.
Thank you, Gugu. I'll be very quick and end with a not so popular statement, and that's is that we all have to understand that we are all accountable. As a social investor, we are accountable to Momentum Metropolitan Holdings that enables us to invest in communities and invest in nonprofits. And for nonprofits to, when approaching corporates, understand that there is an accountability measure on us, and the same is true for nonprofits. So we look for nonprofits that align with our values and where we can see the commitment to transparency and to integrity, as Lesedi Labate has demonstrated, and that's why we love working with them.
Indeed. Thank you so much. And I think your argument has gotten a lot of praise in the comment section of the chat. Zero-rated data access, not only for volunteers, but I think even for the beneficiaries themselves, as we've witnessed in our conversation here today. Thank you so much to Charlene, Thapelo, and Sarah for joining us in this conversation. Thapelo, again, your organization also receiving a lot of credit for literally being the light within the communities that you serve. So we thank you for your contribution. And Sarah, keep using your internal passions to change the world and allow us to all contribute as a collective effort to the changes we want to see in society. So thank you once more to all my panelists, Charlene, Tato, as well as Sarah, for joining us in conversation here today as we have reviewed and reflected the volunteerism environment and how it's been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic.